Okay, let's get started. Welcome to the webinar entitled "Have You Been Hacked? Follow These Steps." Brought to you by the Economic Development Department in partnership with the BEDC. My name is Ricardo Mello, and I'm the Cyber Risk Operations Manager at Clarien Bank. Most people call me Rick or Ricky, and I've been working in the technology industry for most of my adult life, about 21 years. I hold certifications such as CISSP, CRISC, SSCP, just to name a few. Most of my experience is in financial services, mostly insurance and banking. But I've also worked in education, and I've been a consultant as well. I've held a variety of positions such as IT analyst, network and security engineer, systems engineer, information security analyst, and now cyber risk operations manager. I am currently responsible for security operations at Clarien Bank, and this involves managing incident response, cyber risk management, the security tool set, managing the information security budget, as well as third-party vendor cyber assessments, security awareness training, among other things. So the website's entitled "You've Been Hacked, Follow These Steps." But we're going to talk about several other topics just to provide some context around it. We'll cover some cybersecurity basics, risk management, cybersecurity framework based on the NIST cybersecurity framework, some incident response, such as incident response planning and incident response scenarios, some small business cybersecurity resources, and everyday tips. So cybersecurity is protecting electronic devices and associated data and information. And you want to ensure that communications are protected with confidentiality, availability, and integrity. Modern small businesses these days can be very complex. There's email to manage, mobile devices, corporate websites, social media, e-commerce systems, online banking, bring your own device policies and office policies, network management, as well as backups and remote access. So it can be quite a task to manage all of these things. And so understanding why cyber criminals do what they do, if you look at the graphic, a whopping 41% of the motives behind recent attacks was to demand ransom. And these numbers are a bit out of date, so I would say the numbers are even higher now. And 27% are due to insiders, employees stealing or selling proprietary information like customer lists or product designs. It's usually an outsider in an organized criminal syndicate attacking large numbers of targets, and they hope to be successful in breaching your defenses or encrypting your data for ransom, known as ransomware. And all industry sectors are vulnerable, as the chart indicates. So cybersecurity objectives. In cybersecurity, this is known as the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So the definition of information security is the protection of information and systems from unauthorized access, use, disclosure, or disruption, modification, or destruction in order to provide confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The careful information security controls is vital to protecting an organization's information assets as well as its reputation, legal position, personnel, and other tangible or intangible assets. So confidentiality is protected information from unauthorized access and disclosure. An example would be a criminal stealing customers' usernames, passwords, or credit card information. Integrity is around protecting information from unauthorized modification. An example would somebody alters a payroll information or a proposed product design. This also includes modifying systems so they don't function as intended. Availability is preventing disruption in how information is accessed. For example, your customers are unable to access your online services. Just to elaborate, maybe your website goes down. And small businesses can have a big impact. They could be a much bigger target to cyber criminals than a bigger organization because they don't have the budgets that larger companies have to afford all the protections, and they see small businesses as easy targets. And attacks can be extremely costly and threaten the viability of your business, as well as affect your reputation to the public. So those are all things that you need to consider. So some of the cybersecurity threats are phishing attacks, ransomware, hacking, imposter scams, and environmental threats. Types of phishing attacks, common one is social engineering attack involving trickery, designed to gain access to systems and steal data. Targeted phishing is called spear phishing, so that's where they target an organization or a person. And variations of this include vishing, which they use voicemail in their attack, or smishing, which uses SMS messages. And here's some examples of what a phishing email can look like. So they may mimic legitimate businesses, such as the examples here, one from the IRS. And they usually outline some sort of urgency and contain some links that you need to click on. But you can always look for the signs, like what email domain did it come from? Does it match what company they're claiming to be? And sort of hovering over links to see if they match the domain and they don't take you to some strange domain. So some more things you can do is never click links or open attachments from unknown senders. Never send passwords or sensitive data via email. Never respond to requests for financial information. Verify the sender's address before clicking. And if you're unsure, contact the sender by phone. So often you may get somebody in your contact list, their email is compromised. So you may think just because it comes from them, you can trust it, but sometimes you can't. So if the email looks strange, you're not expecting it, contains an attachment or a link, sometimes it's just best to pick up the phone and call them and confirm that they actually are the ones who sent it. You want to protect your systems, update regularly using endpoint protection, some email phishing protection, as well as backup regularly. And you also want to use multi-factor authentication. So that's when you enter your username and password, and then you get a second prompt, sometimes by email, by SMS, or by using an authenticator app like Google Authenticator, just to provide a second factor to authenticate you. So it provides an extra layer of security in addition to your password. Ransomware is very popular nowadays, and I'm sure everybody's heard about ransomware, which is a type of software with malicious intent and threats to harm your data. The author or distributor requires a ransom to undo the damage. No guarantee the ransom payment will work, and it often needs to be paid in cryptocurrency. So what they do is they encrypt your files, which is basically using a strong method to password protect them, so to speak, and then they won't unlock them unless you pay the ransom, basically. And one example was WannaCry, which was a very popular ransomware that was very widespread, affecting hundreds of thousands of machines and crippling many businesses such as banks, law enforcement agencies, and other infrastructure. So some ransomware controls that you should have in place are data backups. You want to have a good endpoint protection solution. So that would be antivirus, or what's known as EDR or EPP. So EDR is enhanced detection and response. Endpoint detection and response, and EPP is endpoint protection. You want to have regularly scheduled patch management, and you also want to plan to fail well. And what we mean by that is having an incident response plan so that you are well prepared in case you have a cyber incident, such as knowing who to call. You also want to train and test your staff. For example, you want to give them some tips to spot phishing emails and how to report them, and just things to be aware of so they can try and keep the organization as safe as possible, as people are the first line of defense and also known in security as the weakest link. So yeah, as I mentioned, phishing, don't open links and attachments that you're unsure of. So hacking is a term that's thrown around a lot these days. So what it means is unauthorized access to systems and information, sometimes not for malicious purposes. You can get these younger hackers out there that just want to test their skills, but in any event, it is still illegal and shouldn't be done. There's also white hat hacking or ethical hacking, where companies hire people to test their applications and find weaknesses so they can patch them. There's also website attacks such as distributed denial of service or denial of service, where they'll send a lot of traffic to your website to overwhelm it, to basically take down the website so it won't be accessible. Access denied to authorized users, and steal funds or intellectual property. An example would be a newspaper kiosk point-of-sale system was hacked. They installed malware on it, so every customer's credit card that was passed through the payment system was sent to criminals. There's also imposter scams, and somebody who pretends to be official calls or emails to report a crisis situation. They may represent the government, a bank, a lottery, or technical support. There's usually a sense of urgency to try and get you to take action quickly, and a penalty if you, or loss if you don't act quickly. So I'm sure many people would heard of those fake tech support scams where people call pretending to be Microsoft, and then they report that your machine needs an urgent patch, and you should let them connect to their machine, connect to your machine, and install it as soon as possible. So environmental threats can also be a problem, such as fire, earthquake, flood. They can cause harm to computers or disrupt business access. Recovery efforts can attract scams as well, because you're in a weakened state after a disaster. Bad actors can look to take advantage of that. And then there's downtime. You can lose customers and clients who can't wait. That's why it's also important to have a good disaster recovery plan, and you make sure you keep it up to date. And one example would be flooding, wiping out a business and their computers. Now we're going to talk a little bit about risk management. So some elements of risk you need to think about are what are the threats to your organization? What are the vulnerabilities? So another word for vulnerability is just basically a weakness in your systems. What is the likelihood of a threat exploiting a vulnerability? And what would be the impact of this to your business? So what are you protecting in your business? To practice cybersecurity risk management, you can start with these steps. So you want to identify all your business assets and inventory them. Identify the value of these assets. You want to document the impact to your business of loss or damage to the assets. And you also want to identify the likelihood of loss or harm. You want to prioritize your mitigation activities accordingly. And there's processes such as a risk assessment where you can determine these outcomes. Another important part of a cybersecurity program is using a framework. Today, we're going to use the NIST cybersecurity framework. There are others out there, such as ISO 27000 and some others, but those two are the most popular. And this is based on 5 key functions: identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. So identify, activities in the identify function are about identifying what is most important to your business, what needs to be protected. This could include identifying business processes, physical assets, software, or information that your business cannot survive without. So identify is about the foundational things. After all, you can't manage what you don't know. The subsequent functions have a lot of dependencies on the identity function. And these are some examples of identify activities, such as identifying critical business processes, documenting information flows, establishing policies for cybersecurity that include roles and responsibilities, maintain hardware and software inventory, identify contracts with external partners, as well as identifying a risk management process. Protect. So activities in the protect function are for ensuring that the critical business processes you identified earlier continue, or that in the event of a disruption, they can be recovered in a timely manner. And some sample protect activities are manage access to assets and information. You want to conduct regular backups, protect sensitive data, patch operating systems and applications, create response and recovery plans, protect your network, such as firewall controls, endpoint protection, and controls like that. And you also want to train your employees as well. So cybersecurity incidents are going to occur. We can't prevent every attack against our businesses and networks. So we need to make sure we are able to detect when something is not quite right. Too often we think we've installed security software and trained our teams, and our work is done. But much of cybersecurity threats are designed to evade easy detection. So the detect function sets us up to consider what best practices will enable us to recognize harms and to react appropriately. And some of the examples would be install and update antivirus and other malware detection software, know what are expected data flows for your business, and maintain and monitor logs. In a lot of information security programs, they have what's called a SIM, which is a security incident and event management system. And that brings in logs from many different systems, and you can set alerts based on different activities, such as maybe somebody logs in from Bermuda all the time, and then all of a sudden they're logging in from India. So that would raise a suspicious event, and then the analyst would investigate it. Respond. So once we've detected an incident in our business or network, we need to have plans in place to respond to the incident. The incident needs to be contained and mitigated. You and your staff need to know what to do, who has the responsibility, and how you will measure your response. Such as, so how do you contain things in the event of a cybersecurity breach? Perhaps your endpoint protection has a feature where it automatically isolates the machine, so it prevents connections to any other device once it detects malware or a virus. Or you may have to do this manually. You may have to manually disconnect the machine from the network while you're treating the infection. Sample respond activities are coordinating with internal and external stakeholders, ensure response plans are tested, ensure response plans are updated, and just to go into more details on responding to incidents, as that's the main part of the webinar. So you want to have an incident response plan, which may outline specific responsibilities for different teams. You want to create an incident response team who's going to take the meeting minutes and how should they be recorded. Are there any related documents that you need to read in accordance with the plan? What constitutes information security incident that requires you to invoke the plan? So for example, just one machine that has a virus that your antivirus quarantines, and then you're able to remediate it. wouldn't constitute as an incident, but maybe if you had a severe outbreak that that affected, say, 10 or more servers, then you may need to consider, what constitutes you invoking the plan. You also want to let users know how to declare an incident, who can declare an incident, what are the contact methods to contact different stakeholders. And you also want to test the plan at least annually or sometimes even biannually. You want to have a communications plan. So you want to outline who can contact different stakeholders. If you have a marketing team, maybe they're the appropriate people. Someone senior in the marketing department, perhaps, and how you're going to distribute the internal communications, public communications, because reputation is very important, so you need to be careful how you communicate, as well as if you need to contact law enforcement. If you're in a regulated industry, do you need to notify the regulator? And in what time frame do you need to notify them? There's also if there's an impacted third party, how do you contact them? Often in contracts, they have cyber stipulations in them, so you may need to review the contract with that vendor and see if you need to contact them within a specific time frame. You should also consider cyber insurance, and if it's worth it to your business. That could offer some, financial protection for you, as well as what's known as a incident response retainer. So you can pay a company to basically reserve a block of hours. So this is a cybersecurity company that would do forensic investigation for you. And you can pay them on a yearly basis to reserve them and book those hours. And usually in the contracts they have it, if you don't have an incident and nothing happens within the year, then you can also use those hours for other activities that they provide, such as penetration testing and different assurance activities. So some related documents may be an incident management policy, and that may outline more roles and responsibilities and different details around how you manage incidents. Also, an enterprise risk management framework and how that all ties in, as well as you may have incident response scenarios. So based on you testing the incident response plan to a specific scenario, maybe there was a attack on payment systems or something, tabletop exercise that you did. You can use the information from that exercise to build a scenario, which basically outlines the steps you need to take in the event that that particular attack happened. There's also data classification and handling policy, as well as reading your cyber insurance policies to know what you're covered for. So we'll just walk through an example of an incident response scenario. So basically, this is for a malware infection. So description: a workstation, laptop, or server is compromised by a virus or malware. So identification: the antivirus software may automatically quarantine or delete infections, alerting the user and the InfoSec team in the process. Symptoms of a virus or malware infection range from degraded service performance to browser pop-ups, hijacked search results, through the data and software corruption. Sometimes there are no symptoms presented, such as keylogger infection. And a keylogger is a piece of software that basically does what it suggests. It sits there and logs keystrokes in the attempt to capture passwords. A user response would be to confirm virus, malware deletion, or quarantine if prompted. So you may get a prompt on your screen to say the AV software has quarantined something, and you should open a ticket with the help desk to report it. And then the IT response would be to just ensure the device is disconnected from the network. And this is to prevent replication or spread throughout the network. So you just want to isolate that device. You want to ascertain the date of the AV software was updated. And if out-of-date definitions are found, you want to update manually. Some of the newer products don't really only rely on virus signatures. They use artificial intelligence to sort of predict patterns and monitor for different actions. So that may be, they will use signatures as well, but that's just part of it. You want to run a full system scan and clean the affected system. You want to ascertain if compromised data is available from recent backups. Restore the relevant data. Bring the machine back onto the network and verify connection to the AV update server. Investigate why the firewall, web proxy, and AV solutions didn't catch the installation of a virus or malware. You want to inform the security team if AV definitions were up to date, but the infection was not prevented by the AV client software. So that may be a weakness in a control that you can use from these lessons learned to improve your controls. So yeah, you want to incorporate lessons learned and conduct a risk assessment to determine if additional controls are required to mitigate the risk of another incident occurring. So the information security response. So when informed by IT of the AV software missing an infection, raise a security incident, log in the name of the infection for future reference and AV vendor decision making. So you may want to contact the vendor and talk them through with it to see why it didn't catch that particular threat. You want to investigate with the assistance of IT the source of the malware, such as compromised legitimate websites, unauthorized user browsing activity, or removable media such as USB drives. If applicable, raise a ticket with IT to block compromised websites from future access. Provide ad hoc awareness training to the user to highlight and correct the root causes of the attack. You want to report any undetected virus or malware files to the AV vendor and any other preventative sites for future detection. So we did cover some of the respond and recover activities, but I'll just go through recover. The recover function supports timely recovery to normal operations to reduce the impact from a cybersecurity incident. The incident and our response activities may have had an effect on our business operations. Recovery activities help restore those business operations to normal. Some sample recovery activities are managing public relations and company reputation. As I mentioned before, you want to outline who has these responsibilities, communicating with internal and external stakeholders, ensure your recovery plans are updated, as I mentioned, and consider cyber security, cyber insurance also. And this just maps the different parts to the framework. So you'd have in the identifier, you'd have asset management, governance, risk assessment, business environment. Protect, you'd have awareness and training, identity and access management. So your username and password access, securing your data. And in detect, you'd have continuous monitoring, such as using a SIEM, as I mentioned before. So a security incident and event management system. Respond, so you want to do response planning and sort out your communications, as well as recovery planning and communications span across both of those pieces as well. So some everyday tips you can use are: be careful of email attachments, web links, and voice calls from unknown numbers. Don't click on links or open an attachment you were not expecting. You want to use separate personal and business computers, mobile devices, and accounts. Sometimes your business will allow you to use your personal devices, but you should have a BYOD policy, so bring your own device policy to outline the rules around connecting to the corporate network. You also want to use multi-factor authentication, as I mentioned previously. Do not download software from an unknown web page. So use trusted software that you know, and always reach out to your IT provider first if you're ever unsure about installing software or to request permission to install software. And of course, you don't want to share your username and password. People often try to do those sorts of things, but you want to keep that private to yourself. It also helps to provide an audit trail. So if you're lending out your username and password and somebody does something malicious, you know, it's basically linked to you. And of course, that will be against any information security policy to give out your username and password. You want to consider using a password management application to store your passwords for you. There are a few password vaults out there, such as 1Password or LastPass, which are two popular ones. And you can store a whole bunch of passwords in there. It is stored with a very high encryption, so the vault is protected very well with strict security. And as the name 1Password suggests, you just need one master password to access the vault. And it also integrates with your web browser. So if you need to generate passwords for a new website, it will automatically make a really strong password for you. It will fill it in the form as well. And basically, you just save it to the vault. That way, you don't even have to remember that password at all. And you can automatically fill it in when you go to websites. So you might choose to outsource some of your security needs. This is pretty common with small businesses, as it can be expensive to run IT based on the size of your organization and the industry you're in. You want to ask for recommendations from business partners and say local chamber of commerce, you know, for vendors and recommendations. You also want to request quotes and have a clear list of actions or outcomes that you want to achieve. It's never good just to go to one vendor. Sometimes you can find the prices will vary on products, and to get the best deal, you definitely want to shop around a bit. You want to check past performance, using reviews posted online. It's not really applicable to Bermuda, but you also want to find out who will be doing the work and asking for their qualifications. So that's important as well, to make sure you have somebody qualified, managing your IT systems and responsible for information security. So there's some basic resources here from the NIST website. There's a good presentation they have outlined here, and I think we have a link here on the next page. So yes, we have several resource links here, such as the National Institute for Standards and Technology, Small Business Cybersecurity Corner. So that will give you a lot of resources. CyberSecure, My Business, and National Cybersecurity Alliance. Another NIST Small Business Fundamentals. And also the Center for Internet Security is also another good resource. Okay, so now it's time for questions, if anyone has any. You could just type your question in the chat if you have one. Okay, I'll just wait a couple of minutes, just in case people are typing.
There are a couple in the questions tab.
Oh, okay, sorry. I was looking in the chat. Here we go. So there have been lots of alerts being sent out due to the Ukraine situation. What should I be doing to make sure I am protected right now? That's a pretty targeted and very political attack. You probably heard in the news, several banks were attacked with denial of service attacks, as well as their Department of Defense website. But I think regular businesses don't really have too much to worry about with that particular issue, because it is very political and very targeted. Okay, I'm just. So I'm having a bit of trouble scrolling through the questions.
So there is a way you can open the tab.
Oh, okay, I see. Here we go. I see now. Are there any extra security steps required if I have an external hard drive set up to auto-save my work? Yes, so you want to make sure you keep that external hard drive in a safe place. So basically, if that's your sole source of backup, you may want to keep it on a locked drawer somewhere when you're not using it, and make sure it's secure at all times. You also may want to consider backing up in a couple of locations, because sometimes these small personal drives, they can fail. So you don't want to just be reliant on a backup in one location. So that's a good idea as well. How can I tell if I have malware apps on my device? That's when your antivirus comes, or your endpoint protection comes into place. Depending on your operating system, Microsoft Windows has built-in protection that you could run scans and see if you're infected with malware. There's also some other products out there, McAfee, Symantec, Sophos, antivirus, all good products. Yeah, so you should basically have those running and let them automatically scan your machines. Like I said, a lot of the times they will automatically quarantine anything that they find. So, and then they'll let you review it to make sure it isn't something that you're legitimately trying to install. Oh, could you also repeat the names of the password management applications? Sure. So it's 1Password, that's the number 1 password, and then LastPass are 2 very popular ones. I actually use 1Password myself. How much time does it take to evaluate the system of a business that is a few years old? I would say it depends on the size of your business, how many assets you have, how many computers, how many servers. Do you have any websites that you're hosting? Are they hosted internally or by a third party? What are your other business your vendors that you rely on for different IT services? So it really depends on the size and complexity of the business. But as you can imagine, the smaller the business, the less time it will take. Okay, if a vendor tells me they have been hacked, what do I need to do with my company and my customers? All right, so it depends what that vendor's function is for you. Do they hold personal customer data? And are they required to report these things? So usually when a vendor gets hacked and public information is leaked, personal identifiable information is leaked, such as email addresses and names and phone numbers, people will need to notify you, and then you can notify your customers accordingly as well. So they may want to change if any emails and passwords are leaked, they may want to change they need to change the passwords to those accounts. And any accounts that have been hacked, they should enable multi-factor authentication. So that's a big thing that can help you protect, add some additional protection to your accounts, rather than just using the username and password. There have been, oh, sorry, I answered that one already. What is the required time frame to report a cyber incident, and who do you report to in Bermuda? That is dependent on whether you're regulated by the BMA. I cannot recall if there's a specific time frame, but it should be done within a reasonable time frame of when it's identified. And the PIPA legislation, although it's been a while since I've been through it, may have something around that as well. So you may want to review the PIPA legislation that's due to come in effect later on this year, I believe. What should I ask vendors that I use to make sure that they protect my information? What about cloud vendors? So you can, what we have in information security is security questionnaires. So basically, you want to make sure that they're running an information security program, that they have vulnerability management, they have endpoint protection, they're using firewalls, they're reviewing access. So you basically want to create a questionnaire, and I'm sure the links that I have may have some resources on what questions you need to ask them, to make sure that they are protecting their data, your information that they're storing. So yeah, that's always a good idea. I think that's the last one, unless there's any other questions. Okay, it looks like that's it. Well, thank you everyone for having me this afternoon, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation and found it informative. Have a good day.